President Garcia Morales, and I call this regular board meeting of April 11th, 2024 to order. The time forgive me, I need to be mindful. We have to start at 5 o'clock. That's when the meeting is posted, so we're going to wait until the clock says 5, which it does now. So the time is 5 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence their electronic devices. We acknowledge the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Before I ask everybody to stand and turn it over to Trustee Zamora, I want to acknowledge our students who come from Rancho High School, ROTC. I'd like to share their names before they come into the room. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Matthew DeQuette, Cadet Major Cameron Valdez Easley, Cadet Captain Louis Tolentino, Cadet Captain Ella Ness Pavinsky, Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Tucker Lai, Chief Master Sergeant Lee Beausoleil, retired United States Air Force instructor, Senior Aerospace Science. Trustee Zamora? Thank you. Please have a seat. All right, we're moving on to 1.02. Trustee Bustamante Adams, are you ready to make the motion to approve the agenda?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to second that motion, please.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Bustamante Adams and a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Now, we're going to move on to consent agenda items at Section 2. Before I open consent, is there anybody in the public who has not had a chance to submit their yellow public comment card? Please do so now. Okay, we're going to begin with individuals who signed up in advance for public comment. For consent items, Dr. Beamel, come on up, please.
Good evening, Tiffany Beeble for the record. When looking at purchasing awards, the money is kind of crazy, but then this meeting's about the budget, which is also kind of wow. Last week, a gentleman spoke about food waste and trying to combat that by collecting and redistributing uneaten food at schools. These purchasing awards include over $4 million in frozen breakfasts and over $100,000 in tortilla chips. If you've ever been at a school at mealtime, so much food goes uneaten and is thrown away. Once again, I will point to my site and what we are doing to help combat food waste. We have a club, the Youth Climate Action Coalition, and they have started a composting service students can utilize that will work as fertilizer, for our special program students' community garden. The compost collection is kept in the science department, but students are able to help by bringing their food waste there to help alleviate what goes into the trash. We need something more, however, to ensure that these millions of dollars are not going to waste because kids are not eating this food, and money is literally being thrown away. I also wanted to touch on 2.08 and more autonomy for site-based administrators. This is scary for some sites. If you aren't familiar with NEPF, you should read it. Teacher evaluations have a section that is based on parent and student opinion. Admin eval should have something similar based on staff and teacher perception. Giving site-based admin more power, especially some of the admin in our district, terrifies some of your teachers. Look at the turnover at certain schools, the vacancies at certain sites. In my experience in CCSD, people leave schools for 3 reasons: their commute, following administrators to new schools, or fleeing from administrators. It's rarely the kids or the neighborhood itself. Granted, I am a bit sheltered because I'm in a rare situation, but that's my experience. If you're going to consider giving these people more power, you should consider adding a portion to their evaluation, a percentage that includes their performance based on the perception of their staff. Not all CCSD administrators are created equal, and not all wield their absolute power in the same way. Some are amazing and will continue to rule in a democratic manner that is fair and equitable, and some will take this power to unleash their true colors. Proceed with caution and learn from the mistakes of the past. That's what history teaches us anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beamel, and appreciate your new term, foodalizer. It's a good one. No, it really is creative. Thank you. All right, colleagues, we don't have any additional public comment on this particular item. This is looking at this time for a motion. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and I will second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. We're now going to move on to warrants. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. Ratified warrants is listed in the bills payable transmittal and board memorandum number 15-23-24 in the total amount of $184,487,952.66.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Okay, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.01. That's the 2024-25 tentative budget. Turn it over to Mr. Gowdy. Welcome, Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Larson Mitchell, Jason Gowdy for the record. Today we're going to be walking through the 24-25 tentative budget. First, I just wanted to thank the budget team as well as some members of the other finance team that do help prepare this, as this is a long, tenuous process for everyone. Overview, skip that. So the timeline, this is the same timeline we see each time. You'll notice we're at the very beginning part, which is the presentation of tentative budget. Just for clarification, the board will not be approving the tentative budget tonight. What they'll be approving is for us to submit it to the state. Per law, it must be out in the public for a number of days, and when we bring back the final budget, that is when the tentative budget will technically be approved. So uncertainties, we talk about this a lot. Enrollment uncertainties, we have had slightly decreasing enrollment over the last several years. Most of the enrollment loss was during COVID. Since then, we somewhat stabilized and had under a 1% drop. We still have a number of resources that we're short in almost every position. So we're also a very large district, so these small decreases in enrollment do not affect our financial stability. Risk of recession, there has been less talk in the economic world about risk of recession, but that's always a risk. Additionally, the impact of inflation, which is significantly more impactful through the district. One is from a construction perspective, costs have gone up dramatically, which have required changes and additional costs to be incurred. Additionally, the impact on our employees over the last few years from an inflationary perspective has caused us challenges and caused the employees challenges in that respect as well. So I mentioned student enrollment. We have an average ADE projected of just around 289,000 students, which is down just slightly from the projected what we're going to end up at fiscal year 24. You'll note at the bottom, last year, or the current year that we're in, which is last budget year, is $9,045 for the adjusted base under the pupil-centered funding plan, and this year it increases to $9,497. So the pupil-centered funding plan, this was adopted back in 22-23, so we're not going to go through all of the details. Everybody's very well aware of it. However, I still just want to bring up the fact that the budget includes the new definition of at-risk that is in place, that was in place for the 23-24 school year, which replaced utilizing free and reduced lunch as a measure of at-risk to the new definition, which is those students of at-risk not graduating with their cohorts, and we use a grad score calculated from Infinite Campus in order to calculate the students that qualify for at-risk. Again, this is our total per pupil revenues. Everyone will notice the large increase in the 24-25 years. That's primarily due to the legislatively approved budget, which did dramatically increase funding. You'll notice that, as I mentioned, $9,045 for base, $9,497 for base in 25. And then the other components are the special education fund, which is fairly flat. The other weighted funding did increase as well, which helps increase our total budget. So this is where the money comes from. Again, very similar. What happens is that the vast majority of all funds from property taxes, sales taxes roll up into the state education fund, and that is the primary funding source for K-12 education. That represents 93.5% of our budget. The other of $226 million is made up of three major components. The first is additional special education funding that we get. That's $150 million. We have about $53 million in interest estimated there, and then around $14 million of indirect costs that roll in from ESSER. So this is just a little bit more detail on the operating revenues. Total local resources, you'll notice that increased just about $5.8 million. That is primarily due to interest income. There is approximately $10 million included in the $53 million, which is what I'm going to call not real interest income. It's marked to market based off accounting rules. And so I'll talk about later how we reserve that out, because ultimately we will not realize that $10 million. State education fund went up just around $103 million, $102,250. Everything else is about flat, so net overall operating revenues went up just around $108 million. Just a little bit more detail on the state projections of the $102 million. It's really due to the fact that we had an increase in per pupil funding of $452 with a slight enrollment loss of just about 3,000 students. So where is the money spent? Again, very similar to the past couple of years, 84% in salaries and benefits, 16% in other, and these are the breakdowns. So our salaries and benefits, just around 65.5% of that is spent in school strategic budgets. Another 18.9% is spent in school-based positions, and 5.1% is spent on transportation, which is solely based for our students. And so essentially about 90% of those funds and salaries and benefits are dedicated at the school level. The major components, textbooks and supplies of around $281 million, utilities, $119 million, professional services, which I'll provide a little bit more detail on, of $63 million, technology of $51 million, property liability insurance of $31, vehicles, buses, and fuel for about $26 million, and repairs and maintenance of around $24.5 million. So some of the details as we look at the professional services are that we have around $9.3 million of speech pathology instruction for speech therapists, $8.7 million for Accelerations Academies. This is to help out dropout recovery services. To be clear, that's essentially a break even for us, because we would not receive any funding for those students from the state if they did not re-enroll. And so essentially, while we spend $8.7, we get that back in revenues. Occupational physical therapy of right around $7 million. Social workers and mental health services, $5.5 million. Contracted nurses of about $5.1 million. Hope Squared is right around $3.3 million. Our Office of General Counsel for Legal Services is $3.2. Athletics events of $2.6, which includes referees, physical therapists, etc. $2 million in general maintenance contractors for preventative maintenance. And then we have some online vendor course content for about $2 million. This includes Apex Learning, Instructure, etc. $1.7 million in general accounting, which includes banking fees, audit fees, Brinks, and other financial services as relate to our investments. And then $1.6 million is for health services, and that includes Lockton Health, our advisor, Vera Health Wellness Centers, which is the free wellness centers that are provided to those employees that are covered by our insurance plan, and then some other reserves for professional services included in there. Money is spent. Okay, so this is where the money is spent in the general fund. Notice that there's about $3.3 billion in total in the general fund itself. Strategic budgets make up almost $2.3 billion of that. The business and finance unit is $329 million of that. I do want to note that our ending fund balance, which is not technically an expenditure, but that is included in that business and finance unit spend as well. Our facilities unit's right around $221 million, and then teaching and learning unit is $196 million, with our operational services unit at about $150 million. Oops. Oh, that's my 13. There we go. Okay. So this is the special education fund, right around $670 million. And really just want to focus on the fact that if you look at the licensed positions, the support positions, and the transportation positions, that represents, just around 90% of those funds going straight into the classrooms or getting the students to the classrooms. So here's the budget comparison as we think about comparing it to the 23-24. Noted that we have just around $108 million more in revenues. The increase in total expenditures is just around $100 million. And ultimately, the fund balance itself declines around $18.1 million. And what that's a result of is we typically have what we call assigned for future initiatives and or potential recession, et cetera. We had planned to spend down some of that that we had built up, and that's what the decline is related to. You'll note that our unassigned fund balance, it remained at 4.5%, but because revenues went up, it's up at $156.6 million, which is our unassigned ending fund balance, which is our overall reserve. Additionally, I did mention that the assigned went down from the beginning of the year, what's projected at the beginning, and that is left with around $54 million. As I mentioned, there's $10 million of fake interest or interest that's booked to market, and so we take that out. Additionally, we have right around $15 million of instructional materials that we have not yet built into the budget based off timing, which are items that we are carrying forward from ESSER. And then additionally, some IT resources to support one-to-one of about $15 million that we are building, and that would essentially come out of that $53 million as well. So there's very little left in that assigned at this point. This is just a quick summary of the unassigned fund balance. You'll note that we are holding at 4.5% this year in our unassigned. The employee contract status, we have completed all of the negotiations with all the bargaining units, and I wasn't going to go through each individual item. Obviously, with Clark County CCEA, the 10% base salary increase in year 1 and 8% in year 2 with some other components to it. ESEA, 8.65% increase in year 1 with a 4% increase in year 2. Our CASAPI, which is our administrators, 10% increase in year 1 with a 3% increase in year 2. Our police officers, we updated our salary scale to be more in line with some other police service agencies within the county. And then in year 2, there's a 3% increase. And then with our police administrators as well, we updated their salary scale as well. And also they get a 3% increase in year 2. And with that, I will turn it over for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gowdy. Colleagues, at this time, we're looking for members to ask questions or take action. I just want to note the record that we do not have public comment for this particular item. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I have just a couple of questions, and it has to do with site-based budgets. I know that this has to be included in our budget, correct? Our site-based budgets.
Just for the record, when you say site-based budget, what is that specifically? What are you
That's
asking?
like what the SOTs look at and, right, what we
Correct.
give, which is what, 85%?
Correct. So that's our strategic budgets. We call those our
Right.
strategic budgets. So yes, that's the large number of the $2.3 billion that is allocated out to the schools.
And looking at that, and looking at the 4.5% that's unassigned, that does not include the carry forward that are in the strategic budgets. Is that correct?
Jason Getty for the record, that is correct. So when we budget, from a governmental agency perspective, we're not allowed to overspend our budget. So that beginning, if you look at the beginning fund balance of about $510 million, that includes right around $260 million of anticipated unspent funds at the school level, which is restricted by law. When we budget, we give that money to the schools through their strategic budgets. They then allocate it either through personnel and/or supplies. And so it's included, that $260 million is included in our expenditures. And that's why there's no balance at the end.
So if you look at slide 8, if you don't mind, you have 510.4 million unassigned. Is that from the strategic budgets?
That primarily is $260 million from that and about $150 from our unassigned. And then we do have some assigned of about $90 million in that category as well at the beginning part of the year.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Gowdy, on page 9, it talks about special education account. And so in your presentation, you said that it would remain flat. Now, just for my edification, can you explain to me, does that special education money where does it come from? Is it part of the student pupil centered funding, or is it another source of revenue?
So Jason Getty for record. So we get two sources of special education. There is an amount in our state education fund, PCFP, which is dedicated to the special education as well. And so there's about $300 million or so in that number related to the special education, and then there's a separate funding mechanism from the state related to the other $149 million. So there's two components. They're part of the funding plan. The $300 million is part of the PCFP, and the other is part of the state education fund plan.
And then, Madam President, another question. So if the state wanted to make an increase in that investment, then it would come from them to be able to say, okay, we're going to put this amount more into that fund, right? Is that how it works?
The state can obviously fund higher, and special education, as I mentioned, has two components to it. There's it doesn't necessarily flow perfectly through the pupil-centered funding plan because it's not technically a weight. It kind of got separated out. But there is a state portion of the funding, and there's what we call the local portion that we get as well. But there's always the opportunity for the legislature to increase funding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Sparsa-Strophagen?
Thank you, Mr. Gowdy, for that comprehensive overview.
I'm sorry, I just turned off your mic by accident. Here, let me see.
I apologize for that. Okay. So we have briefings that the public is not aware of, and I wanted to bring to light to a question that I asked because it's been something that's been recurring with certain individuals. New legislation came out about the carryover funds. So can we just take one at a time, and that way we can clarify and it's on record so people have awareness? How much of a percentage can they carry over?
So SB 282 went into effect. Administratively, it's already in effect, and from the operational component, it goes into effect 7/1 of 24. As of that date, what happens is that we will measure the ending fund balances at 6/30/24 as a percentage of the expenditures, and the max is 5%, and they will then have 2 years in which to spend their excess fund balance down under that 5%.
Thank you for that. That was my second part, which you probably remembered. Then the other question regarding that is they want to know what happens to the money that is not spent, the unspent funds.
So per law, once we get to the 2 year, and it's a rolling 2 years, so once we get to 2027, every year after that, there'll be another measurement date. If there are any schools that have excess funds above the 5%, they would revert back to the state and ultimately fund into the state education stabilization account.
Thank you. And Madam President, I have one more question, just for clarification, because I'm getting them as well. So what is the plan and what supports are being given, like central? Because I know you also supervise facilities for people to be able to have not the stop gaps, like if they're putting in orders to replace things. I know construction is something that we can't control, or services, sometimes we don't have goods coming in on a timely fashion. But what is it that you're putting in place to support them to have the ability to spend it down?
So Jason Getty for the record. So there's a couple of things. First, from a facilities perspective, we have doubled the size of our team. We brought that contract to the board maybe a month or so, a few meetings ago, to double the size of the team, which is an external team, to help project manage those site-based projects. We've also are undergoing a reorganization within our construction management team to better align with the needs of the district. We are utilizing a structure that was created back somewhere around 2008 when we lost our bonding capacity, and so we essentially stopped constructing and we had to cut bodies. We have yet to fill those positions or realign with the true needs of schools. So we're going to be doing that, which will provide more direct supervision and support for those schools. Additionally, some of the other pieces that we're working on is identifying the critical ESSER-funded projects that were successful, and how those projects can be continued to be utilized by schools in order to spend those funds.
Thank you, Trustee Sparsa-Stroff again. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a quick question. Do you happen to know the amount that it would cost the district for the just mandates that we got that were in effect in July from the NV Ledge? Because I know there was a lot of unfunded mandates, and I know we've talked about it before, but is there an amount to it?
Jason Getty, for the record, there is an amount. I don't recall it off the top of my head. I probably tried to forget it. But it was a large amount, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Johnson. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Johnson?
I just had a question. If it's helpful for me to put it in context, and I recognize that we deal with really big budgets. One, is there any way that we could figure out the way that we compare to the four other largest, so Miami-Dade, CPS, and then LAUSD, and so I can help contextualize how we spend versus how they spend. And I recognize LAUSD is significantly larger, and so their dollar amounts. But imagine the proportionality might be similar, and so that would be helpful for me as we move forward in the process. So it's not a today piece of information. And the other piece of information that would be helpful for me as well would be if we could provide expense trend data. So how we've spent over the last maybe 3 or 4. I know the last 4 are probably are challenging just given COVID, but even if you want to get back to 19 before COVID and leave out 21 and 20, again, that'd be helpful just to contextualize the way that we spend in proportions and then how it may have changed over time.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. I believe you were making statements of information that you'd like for future, something that we can sit and talk about so that we continue to feel supported. Okay, thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. And I think my question, Mr. Gowdy, was partially answered by Trustee Bustamante Adams' question. But knowing that we have so many substitutes in special ed, that's been documented many times, so there is no way, and I'm not sure if I missed this, but there is no way that they can bank any of that money if they don't spend all that money for special education to bank it and carry it over?
Jason Getty, for the record, under AB 469, special education was designated as a restricted set of funds, and so it was essentially excluded from the carryover component. But again, special education is funded through the general operating fund, which is a combination of general fund as well as a special education fund. And you'll note there's a large transfer of approximately $450 or $460 billion out of the general fund to support that. And so the question for us is always continuing to understand the needs of special education, knowing that there's certain legal mandates, and then working on how we meet those. So they do not bank their money, but the district does. And we're then able to, if we are able to use it such as that assigned balance, we can then utilize that fund to help in short term, in the short term.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gowdy. Madam President, I had one short follow-up, but it's not a follow-up, it's on a different topic. This was something Mr. Gowdy answered for me in a briefing, but again, the public doesn't hear that. And I don't have the slide page number here. But when we're talking about the budget and on technology, and we're talking about the one-to-one devices, can you give us like kind of like an update for the public on just where we stand with our Chromebooks? Because I get a lot of questions about that. And
sure, Jason Gowdy for the record. So during ESSER, we were spending right around $100 million in a year on technology related to projects. That was including one-to-one. There were also some other components in there related to ensuring that we had the interactive flat panels. I always mess that up. Interactive flat panels in schools. Now, we didn't put them in all, but the schools that needed them have those. And obviously, we lost $100 million because all of our ESSER funding goes away this year. We understood the importance of maintaining one-to-one devices, especially given the equity challenges that we have in our district, to make sure that everybody had access to that. That included the access to Wi-Fi and some of those other programs that we put in place. It also includes a number of personnel. And so we started looking at how would we fund that going forward, knowing that we're not going to have $100 million. Some of it went away in the interactive flat panel. The other piece is just a reduction of the services that we can provide from a central perspective in order to cover the full one-to-one, and we went to what we'll call a more minimized kind of plan. Included in that was originally an estimate of around $30 million related to Chromebooks. And the way that's figured out is that we have approximately 300,000 Chromebooks that are needed each year. And at the time, we had an estimated useful life around 4 years. You divide it up, 75,000 right around at $400 per item, gets you your $30 million. So that was kind of what we call a placeholder for what we would need on a annual average basis going forward. From there, we then performed inventories of what levels that we had at the time, because when we had COVID money, ESSER money, we stocked up. We wanted to make sure that each school had the appropriate number. And so at this point, after doing the inventory, we have some excess, meaning that we will not have to purchase any Chromebooks during the 2024-2025 year. And that doesn't free up money, because ultimately that was money we didn't necessarily have, and we would have had to delve into our reserves in order to pay for that for a year, which would have been a decision that the board would have had to make if we got there. Currently, we don't have that need because of where we are. The other piece that came into play was that Google originally had an end of life of 7 years, which seems like a long time, except for the fact that some of the devices that we purchased during ESSER, because you could only get what you could hand your hands on, may have been sitting in a warehouse for 2 or 3 years, and so we only had a few years left on that. Google extended their end of life to 10 years, which means that the software can be updated and we can keep it secured and operational. And so that also had an impact on us being able to not be able to buy, because we would have had a number, 50 or 60,000, that I think would have come end of life this year anyway. But because of that, we were able to continue to use those devices.
Thank you so much for that elaboration, Mr. Gowdy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. As always, thank you. I appreciate it. One question, just could you cover the transferring out of weights and what that looks like?
Jason, getting for the record, are you talking the specific piece
Like
that's on here? Yeah, so there are, the weights are for 3 major components: our English learners, our at-risk, and our GATE. And there are costs within there that are administrative that are essentially covered by the general fund, and those costs are then transferred into those funds so that essentially we're not utilizing administrative costs within those funds because the intention was those to be used for those students.
Okay, and then it transfers to the strategic budgets, and then there are certain, there's certain things they can purchase at the school level.
So, yeah, so the transfer overall that was on here, that's what the general fund sends to those funds to cover for the administrative costs that are within
Okay.
those. The other piece is that we do provide EL and at-risk funding based off of the amounts that we get from the state for those students to each school. They then have a list of Zoom and Victory services. Even though they eliminated Zoom and Victory schools, they kept the definition of the types of services that those funds could be used for. And so, yes, for EL and at-risk, those are defined, and specific services are covered for that funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks, Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to make a motion to accept the 2024-2025 tentative budget.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. All right, colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman. Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Zamora. Please cast your vote. All right, colleagues, thank you. That motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Gowdy. All right, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.02, public hearing on and possible approval of the new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Education Association. This is an action item. So 3.02 is an action item. We don't have individuals who signed up in advance. However, we do have some yellow cards. I will ask Mr. Hall for the presentation first, and then we'll take public comment, and then we will go into member discussion. Mr. Hall?
Nevada Revised Statute 288.153 requires that any new, extended, or modified collective bargaining agreement between a local government employer and an employee organization be approved by the governing body of the local government employer at a public hearing, and that the chief executive officer of the local government shall report to the local government the fiscal impact of the agreement. The Board of Trustees of the Clark County School District, or CCSD, approved a negotiated agreement between CCSD and the Clark County Education Association, or CCEA. An agreement has been reached pending approval by the Board of Trustees and the interim superintendent of schools regarding amending the language of the 2023 through 2025 negotiated agreement concerning the professional salary table, or PST. There are no additional costs associated with entering into this memorandum of agreement. This is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on, discussion of, and possible action on approval of the new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Education Association regarding amending the language of the 2023 through 2025 negotiated agreement concerning the professional salary table.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. All right, individuals who signed up in advance. We have Jessica. Jessica, come on up. I can see, may I take this? Thank you. Jessica Shannon, and Sheenan. Jessica Sheenan, forgive me, and Jordan Wagner.
Okay, hi. My name's Jessica Sharon. I'm a school psychologist here. I'm a CCA member, and I'm the president of the Nevada Association of School Psychologists. I am here to ask you for your approval for this item, 3.02, clarifying the contract language for this professional salary table. From the perspective of a school psychologist and another licensed professional, adding certainty that our education will be considered as we are hired into the district means so much. Because historically, when I was first hired, where we are now, we have made so much growth. And if we can continue to ensure that other licensed professionals are compensated at their educational level, we can finally be competitive. We haven't been competitive for a very long time, and school psychologists and other licensed professionals have been in a critical shortage for as long as I've been in the district, long before that, and maybe long after I'm gone. But that doesn't have to be the case. For a school psychologist, we are required to have a master's plus 32 in order to get an educational license. I know that counselors are required to have a master's degree in order to even be a school counselor. The same is for, that goes the same for occupational therapists, for physical therapists, for audiologists, all other licensed professionals. So by adding language that ensures that our education is considered upon our hiring and our placement on the salary table, it would mean that maybe these positions that mean so much to our students don't have to be in a critical shortage anymore. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Jordan Wegner.
Hello. Hello, trustees and interim superintendent. My name is Jordan Winger, and I'm a school psychologist in CCSD and also serve on CCEA's executive board. I am speaking in favor of adopting the clarifying language to our current contract. This language change addresses the initial placement of licensed staff on the salary table. It seeks to honor education and experience relevant to that educator's field. I can certainly speak to the positive impact this language will have for our incoming other licensed professionals, like psychologists, social workers, counselors, just to name a few. These positions require advanced degrees to license just to practice in the schools. Counselors and social workers require a master's, school psychologists end up with a master's plus 32. You all have heard many people talk about how CCSD's starting teacher salary is finally competitive with the Western states. But I also want you to know that this language change ensures that we will also be competitive with the starting salaries for our OLPs. For instance, the starting salary for school psychologists next year is competitive with LA Unified, both starting at $93,000. We have taken several steps forward in addressing specifically school psychologists' starting salaries within the last several years. I'm excited for my department to go out and recruit more of us because ultimately better ratios for our mental health professionals, our providers, ensures that our students receive the wraparound services that they desperately need. Thank you for your time.
Great. Colleagues, that concludes public comment. I'm going to start with Trustee Guzman. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I have to abstain from this vote because some of my members will be able to benefit from this.
Okay. Thank you for that. And allow me to go off script here, colleagues, or excuse me for going off script. I want to confirm that public comment is over and the public hearing is done. Excuse me, the public hearing is now closed. Okay. So thank you, Trustee Guzman, for that abstention. Yeah. Trustee Watson?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to disclose that I am a staffer with the Clark County Education Association. Although I don't have a right to vote, I do want to make that disclosure. Disclaimer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Correct. Thank you, Trustee Watson. Appreciate that. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I want to thank the two school psychologists that are here tonight. I know what your ratios are like. I know what your work is like, and I commend you and thank you very deeply. I think we all do for the work that you do. I am ready to make a motion, but I see that there are other colleagues in the queue.
You're welcome to make a motion, Trustee Cavazos, and then we'll seek a second.
I would like to make a motion to approve 3.02 the approval of the new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Education Association regarding amending the language of the 2023-2025 negotiated agreement concerning the professional salary table.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos, a second by Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please cast your vote. Okay, colleagues, thank you. That motion passes 5 to 1 abstention. Okay. 5 to 1 to 0. I said it right. Yes. Come for me, council. All right, Trustee Bustamante Adams? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Hall, thank you. All right, colleagues, we are now at the point of the agenda where we're going to go into public comment on items not listed as action items. Okay, this is time if you would like to speak on an item that was not on our agenda, please submit a yellow card. Otherwise, once we begin taking public comment, we will no longer accept yellow cards. We'll begin with individuals who signed up in advance. Is Rachel Farner here? Rachel, come on up, please, followed by Dr. Beamel.
Hello, Board of Trustees. Thank you tonight. If you'll forgive me, I'm going to be reading off of my notes. I'm a mother of 2 twice exceptional children who are gifted and also have a 504, and they're with me tonight. My son is exceptional and gifted in math and science. He has been assessed for math, and he is now taking 9th grade algebra as a 7th grader. I'm very proud. However, over the past 2 years, our requests for his science to be assessed have been denied. Despite him scoring 99.9 percentile on the national math test, that is high even for a high schooler. I lost my spot, forgive me. His neuropsychologist in his 504 evaluation recommended that he be academically challenged and placed in appropriate classes. However, over the past 2 years, every year, these requests have been ignored, and we are absolutely perplexed why he was able to accelerate in math, but not in science. We've spoken with numerous administrators at the district and to request options for him to just simply show his competency, to show his abilities, for him to say, I don't want to be reviewing anymore. I want to be learning. He's excited. He's enthusiastic. Science is the field he really wants to work in. As we've spoken with these administrators, we've gotten conflicting information that, as I've now reviewed a lot of the state statutes, also conflicts with the state statutes. I've asked for clarification on policies and where we're getting the no's from. Nobody can tell me where the no comes from, but I can find a lot of information that would allow him to test and show competency and take classes that are higher accelerated, similar to what he's already doing with his math. What I am requesting from you is your assistance, because one of these statutes named you guys specifically. So some of the statutes that we need clarification on that I hope will help not only my son, but other students like him. I've spoken to other parents who are struggling with the same restrictions. Statute NAC 389.829 and NAC 389.670. That last statute specifically is credit granted for performance, an exemption on examinations in lieu of attendance. So testing out, an end-of-year exam, something that reflects similar to what he did in math. In that statute, it states that the Board of Trustees of each school district shall prescribe an application for pupils to apply for credit for a specific course of study without having attended the regularly scheduled classes and course pursuant to NRS 389717. I understand my time's short. I've emailed some of you, and I have also spoken with the district today, and they reached out, so hopefully we can resolve this. But I do believe your clarification and making sure that this statute is being implemented and followed will hopefully help my son and other students. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Rachel, could you please state your name for the record? And thank you.
My name is Rachel Farner, Farner. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And I appreciate you acknowledging that the district has already been in touch with you. So thank you for your advocacy of your amazing humans and ensuring, thank you already, Dr. Larson Mitchell, for making that contact and connection. All right. Dr. Beamel, could you come on up, please? After Dr. Beamel, we have Vicky Kreidel.
Good evening, Tiffany Beamel for the record. This week is the 2-year anniversary of the first time I spoke to you all. Some faces have changed, but I spoke on 4 topics that night: testing, a lack of fun in school, frustration at all levels, and a lack of faith in teachers' health trust. I am such a broken record. Oh, CCSD. Yesterday, we got the news that we are moving back to minimum F for final exams, meaning a student can no-show for a final, and they will still earn a 50%. So all of the speeches that we have given all year about the importance of showing up, working hard, and trying will be negated by a minimum F. This is frustrating, and I don't really know how to put the frustrations into words. If a student doesn't show up, the exam should be a 0, not a 50. I understand a 50 if a student tries and gets like a 30, but not for not showing up. This is not a good precedent to move back to. And what is the threshold? Does this mean we are moving back to minimum F for next school year? Are we ending the school year on this note to set the bar for next year? What are we doing? Changing the script this late in the game is confusing and makes no sense. We still have chronic absenteeism. In fact, I have students I have not seen in the fourth quarter because we are on block schedule and they are excused for field trips every block day. Again, with all these absences, teachers and field trips, teachers are out and off campus. We rely on our underpaid office managers to play Tetris in trying to cover classes because there are not enough substitutes taking jobs. Our district leaders need to reevaluate the importance of school office leaders and the staggering amount of work that they do on the daily, especially if you haven't seen the new payroll nonsense they have to put up with and how to pay us for all the classes that we cover, because it's crazy. The codes are insane. They are overworked, underpaid, and under constant pressure to do more for way less. Substitutes or guest teachers need to be paid more. They need some sort of benefits or incentives to do this job. It cannot be easy to do the job of a teacher for less than the pay of an employee at Starbucks. These people are educating our children too, right? There has to be a way to compensate long-term positions for the extra work that is expected of them. This job is difficult, and to do it without paid holidays, without benefits, without overtime, I work an extra 20 to 30 hours a week outside of contract, and I can't imagine doing that as an hourly employee. Talk about a true labor of love. Pay them. If CCSD can continue to find hundreds of thousands of dollars for more administrators, school murals, and tortilla chips, surely they can find budget money to give support staff and guest teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beamel. Vicki Kreidel, followed by Anna Binder and Jeremy Herman.
Good evening, trustees and Dr. Larson Mitchell. My name is Vicki Kreidel. I'm a reading teacher in Clark County School District and president of NEA of Southern Nevada. This is a critical point in CCSD. We are facing what may be the largest shortage we've ever had of licensed educators, which is why it's vital that we do everything possible to try to retain the educators that we have now. I asked a group of educators that I know for suggestions on things the district could do to keep people here. Here are some of their suggestions, and each week I'm going to bring a few of their suggestions. One thing I've heard over and over and over is the need for good therapy. My educators cannot get therapists. They call, they use all the resources, and they're not able to get anyone. They can get a few visits with telemedicine. That's not enough when you're dealing with an important issue that needs to be handled. So I would like the district to look into a resource for our educators and our staff to be able to access. Even telemedicine therapy would be helpful. Someone said that we all enjoy when local businesses give discounts to educators, but it would be really appreciated if this was extended. Somebody suggested possibly asking casinos to give free parking for educators on weekends or something like that, so that the educators feel more appreciated. The mandatory videos that we do each year are getting really out of hand. It takes 15 to 20 hours per year for us to complete all the videos. So they're asking us either to get paid for our time, reduce the amount of videos, or let those of us who are veteran educators who've watched these many times maybe skip a year and do them every other year. The portable situation in CCSD is really bad right now. Many are very run down. They have holes in the walls, worn out, smelly carpeting, doors that won't lock. They're not secure. And some have thermostats that are now locked so that they cannot lower the temperature below 80 degrees. So you have students and teachers in portable classrooms as the temperatures get higher now. 82 degrees this week. One of the teachers sent me a picture of the temperature in their portable. That's not acceptable. Lastly, I spoke to Dr. Delmont recently about the data breach. She told me that there really isn't much that they can do to protect our data. She said these are really bad people and they're very smart, and if they want to break into our system, they will. And if that's the case, I'm asking the district to consider providing free credit monitoring for all employees. I pay to have my credit monitored, but there's been a lot of weird phone calls that have been coming in for some of my colleagues, and we're getting concerned that our data has been leaked and we don't want our credit to be damaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kreidel. Ms. Binder, followed by Jeremy Herman and Andrea Moses.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Anna Binder for the record. I'm going to try as best as I can to stay calm while I blurt a whole bunch of this stuff out. So I've been a little inundated. I have something family going on right now, so I will admit that I am not on top of a couple things. But when I went in and reviewed tonight's agenda earlier in the week, there's a specific website where you can look up CCSD policies. It gives you a link. If you just Google CCSD policies, there's a link at the top that says, click here for, whatever. So then at the top, it's, ones coming up for consideration, ones that are up for consideration, ones that have passed, and ones that are going for final passage. That website has not been updated in a really long time. I'm aware of that. But I got concerned because tonight you guys just passed an AB 469 policy that was never on that website. Our AB 469 subcommittee hasn't met in 2 years, maybe, give or take somewhere there. Then, as Mr. Gowdy said, these policies and procedures have to be out in the public for certain periods of time before they're passed. So I haven't seen it before on an agenda. It's not on the website, but it got shoved into consent agenda tonight. And then there's not even a red line version of it because all of those other processes were skipped. So now when I get time this weekend, I have to recreate the document, go back and find this existing policy to redline my own version to see what was added or changed because there was no public comment or no public discussion about it at all. And I haven't even had time to tell the state. So the last time this happened and I notified the state, this board was warned about that policy and they still did it anyways, but that's not my business. But it's like, I can't even look at a policy and see a redline version when processes are getting skipped, which is not transparent and it is not fair to anyone in the public looking, which yes, sometimes is only me. I apologize for that. Then tonight, hearing another conversation that just happened in front of you was bold-faced lies. I am in the process of filing yet another federal grant fraud complaint. It's not my fault. The feds don't want to investigate you. Maybe they are. I don't know. But I literally have such concrete proof of something you were just told tonight is such a blatant lie. I just can't. I'm sick. I am sick to my stomach.
Ms. Binder, come back, please. What policy are you referring to? If you're going to continue to engage it, you should come up to the mic to finish your statement if you want. All right. Is Jeremy Herman here? Thank you, Jeremy. And followed by Andrea Moses, and Heidi Lopez.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Herman. I was here a month ago on March 14th to talk about the issues that we're having at Ruthie Deskin Elementary. I came here saying that we have a principal who's known for retaliation and bullying. I came and I spoke as a whistleblower. 3 days later, I was trespassed from the school. I have not been on school property for weeks. I haven't been inside that building for months, since September. I got a call from CCSD police saying that if I go to my son's school, I will be arrested. For speaking out, not for anything that happened in the school, but for speaking out. So I also came here with a petition that included 58 signatures of parents requesting an investigation by this body. I'm wondering what's going on with that investigation. What is the status of that investigation? State law says that we can request that investigation if 5% of the parents of the kids at that school sign. We had, I think our threshold number was 27. We had 58 signatures. So please investigate our school. We have serious problems. There are 3 more parents here to talk about the problems that we're still having, continuing to have, and the issues aren't going away. So we're not going to go away. We're going to continue to stand up here and ask for accountability. Thank you.
Andrea?
Can you all hear me? Okay. Hello, my name is Andrea Moses. You saw me last month on March 14th. I was here to speak about my son, Gentry, who was a student in the primary autism kindergarten classroom at Ruth Deskin. My son has not been to school in a month. And last week, his father and I made the choice to withdraw him from school. That was not an easy choice. My son wakes up every day asking me why he can't go to school, and he wants to see his friends and learn. Nothing has been done at Ruth Deskin. Nothing is changing. Parents are being kicked off of campus. They can't even go see their children. There is still no licensed teacher in that classroom. Yet they send me emails assuring me that they can handle my son and his needs. Where's the confidence in that? I'm going to send him back to the same situation. If things in that classroom were going on in my personal home, they would be investigated by Child Protective Services. So why is nothing being done? I have called case management. I have tried to get him into his own school. I am being told there is no room for my son. I am being denied giving my son the education he's entitled to. And that's a problem. What do you expect us parents to do? We contact all the people, we reach out to everybody, and we get the runaround. As parents, we are at the end. What do we do? When is enough enough? And when do our children get the education they're entitled to that every other child should be getting? Thank you.
Heidi Lopez, followed by Iva K. Lewis.
Hi, I'm Heidi Lopez, and I came to you a month ago with the concerns of Ruthie Duskin and our children there. Nothing has been done. I still stand with you for you guys to do something. What is it going to take? We still have children eloping. I have parents that are afraid to come forth because of the parents that did the last time they got retaliation against. Not just them, but our children that are nonverbal. We are their advocate, and you want us to be involved, and here we are come before you, and nothing has been done to it. Our children are at stake. They are our future. When is the school going to be held accountable? When is someone going to stand up for them? You guys are all sitting here. We come before you with all our concerns for their well-being, for their education. And when the truth comes out, and it will, where were you? Were you sitting, or were you doing something to help our children and their future and let them have a good experience? This is not okay. It is not okay for our children that were once loving, happy-go-lucky children that love to go to school to be told that they're combative, they're running, they're spitting, they're hitting, that weren't doing it before. And if you need the proof, I'll give you the proof, because I have receipts. I'm involved with my children and what's going on, because it matters to me what happens with them and where they will go. And if you guys aren't going to care, someone's going to care. Someone's going to hear us, someone's going to help us step up, and someone's going to do something. You guys are all in this field. You should care. If we're coming to you as a concerned parent, we're not disgruntled. We're caring parents that care about our children's well-being and what's going on in their school. And when we reach out to you and we're being met with retaliation and intimidation, that's not okay. You want your kids going to a school where you're being intimidated or retaliated against because you came to them with a concern? Because I did all the right things. I made all the right calls before I ever had to pull my child. I called, I emailed, I came and met, and yet still I had to pull him to show you there is something going on in room 80, and it's not with just my child, it's not with many, many more. I have parents that come and contact me. I can't bring up their names, but their children are coming home with bruises and are lethargically tired. My child has come home lethargically tired, where he just falls asleep. I turn around, there he's fallen asleep. And not just that, he's come home with disintegrating diapers and, wet pants. This is not okay. It is not. Do something. What is it going to take for someone to stand up for our children, not just as parents, but as people, as a community? We need to stand up and say enough is enough, and let's do something. Let's let them have a great experience, because this builds your life. You know what I mean? What's going on right now is going to be the end predictor of their life, or what's going to go on in the school for them. And it starts with all of us doing something for them and standing up. Do something.
Iva?
Hi, my name is Iva Lewis. Excuse my voice, I am under the weather. But I've spoken out to you guys recently, time and time again, about my son, Theo Lewis, and how he's been treated at Ruth Deskin Elementary. I don't know what else to do. I've cried, I screamed, I've written letters, I've emailed people. I'm at my It's Win, and it is so uncomfortable that every morning that when I drop my son off to school, I gotta pray over my baby. I pray over my child because I don't know what is gonna happen. Is today gonna be the day that Theo elopes and somebody kidnaps him? Is today gonna be the day that Theo elopes and he gets bit by a dog? Is today gonna be the day that Theo elopes and maybe, just maybe, he just gets far away to where nobody even notices that he's gone and my baby is gone forever? Like, that school is putting my child in danger. And the fact that I have to send my child to school every day, I can't keep my baby at home. My baby is safe when he's with me, but when I send him to that school, I'm sending him into the lion's den, straight into the lion's den. Like, there's no support at all. Like, I don't know what else you want from me as his mother, because I feel like if the tables were turned, I would be investigated. And matter of fact, I just got a letter today stating that my son's absences are so excessive that I need to contact his school. Why does my son have so many unexcused accepted absences, you might ask? Well, because I sent him into the lion's den. My baby's not safe, so I have to keep him home. Like, he's missing out on an education because he's not safe, and that's not fair to him. It's not fair to me. And so I'm asking you and I'm begging you, please, please, please do something. Investigate. Give us somebody that is properly trained in these classrooms that will understand our children and not look at them as their burdens, because that's how these teachers are looking at our children, as if they're burdens. And our babies didn't ask to be born this way. They didn't ask that. So we're dealing with the cards that we were dealt, and all we're asking is for the support and love and compassion. And if you guys, please, I'm just asking and begging, please just investigate, do something, put someone in those classrooms that are educated and are going to love our children, that are going to look at our babies like that. They're beautiful kids and they deserve an education. That's all I'm asking, please. And thank you for your time.
Okay, colleagues, that concludes public comment. I'm going to move on to item 5.01. That's the upcoming board meeting of the Board of Trustees on April 25th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. I'm looking at this time for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Zamora, a second by Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please cast your vote. Okay, thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. The time is 6:09. Have a great evening.